Okay, it's 5:30. Welcome everyone. I'd like to call the meeting.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Raptor.
Here.
Nemecheck.
Here.
Conklin.
Here.
Moody.
Here.
Meehammer.
Here.
Quorum present.
Okay, thank you. Next up, the citizens' comments on non-agenda items. So if anyone in the audience has any comments they'd like to make to the city commission that is not related to the short-term rental discussion we're going to have, that would be the appropriate time. I ask that you go over to the podium and you have a 5-minute limit. Anyone interested? Okay, if not, we can move on to our short-term rental work session. This is our third meeting of short-term rental. The way that I'd like this to move forward is Scott will give his report with the short-term rental status update and then the review and discussion of the draft short-term rental ordinance. Commissioners, if you have any questions during the presentation, just for clarification, feel free to ask them. Once we go through that, then we'll open it up for citizens' comments. And again, we'll be limited to 5 minutes. If you would go to the podium and state your name and address. So, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. First, the status update of the changes since we first started getting the grants data. Back in December, as you can see on the screen, that's a screenshot from the Granicus website. We had 145 rental units. And the bottom numbers are 231 and 230. Those are the number of listings. The difference is that a listing is more. A lot of people rent list on more than one website, so they may have VRBO or Airbnb or whatnot, but it's just one unit. So the number of rentals is lower than the total number of listings. So at that time it was 145. And then in March of 2022, that went up to 156. And then in June of 2022, that went up to 171 rental units. Now, I reviewed these number of rental units, and some of them were duplicates and some of them were not in the jurisdiction. So the actual number was a little bit less. Go to the next slide. So in December 2021, there was 141 total short-term rental units in the city. That made up about 5.8% of the housing units. I broke those out by district. This is our zoning district map, and I overlaid the most recent short-term rentals on there. So each red dot on there represents a short-term rental unit. Back in December 2021, there were 64 in the TRD district. That's the traditional residential district. That is the yellow area that kind of surrounds the majority of the city. There was 16 in the central business district, that's the pink area, that's the downtown area. There were 45 in the multi-family residential district. That's the dark brown areas that you see around. And there were 12 in the waterfront residential districts. And those are the blue areas along the lake shore. And there were 3 in the rural estate district. Those are the lighter yellow kind of on the periphery of the city. So then in March, we reviewed it again, and at that time, there was 153 that were verified, 74 in the traditional residential district, which is an increase of 10 units, 46 in the multifamily district, that was an increase of 1, 17 in the central business district, which is an increase of 1, and 12 in waterfront residential district, there's no change there. And in the rural estate district, there was 3 and no change there. So then in June, this was updated again, and there was 165 that I verified, which represented 6.8% of all the total housing units in the city. 80 were in the traditional residential district, which was a 6-unit increase. 51 in the multifamily residential district, which was an increase of 5. 18 in the central business district, which was an increase of 1. 12 in the waterfront residential district, no change there. And rural estate district, there's no change there. So it appears the bulk of the growth over time has been in the traditional residential district and some in the multifamily district. As you may recall, at the second work session, the status update was provided by staff and we reviewed the comparative matrix of short-term rental regulations for 15 different municipalities. After review discussion of the various ordinance, consensus of the commission that SCR ordinance should be developed and directed staff to begin developing a draft ordinance for the discussion. Using the adopted ordinance for various views as a starting point, staff developed a draft ordinance attempted to incorporate issues raised by the commission. It should be noted that provided documents should be considered a preliminary and should not be considered an ordinance that is being told for adoption, but more working document to begin the discussion. As discussed by the commission, the short-term rental ordinance should be a police power ordinance, and this is the form of the ordinance that has been provided. And after reviewing the city's current code of ordinances, we found short-term rental ordinance does not fit neatly any of the existing chapters of the code, so it's proposed they're using the reserve chapter 15 and dedicate that to the short-term. The provided document attempted to include both issues that were clearly identified and needed to be incorporated into an ordinance, and also issues or concepts that needed additional discussion or further determination. And in the proposed ordinance, those are highlighted. The provided draft will be comprised of 8 sections, and each will be discussed individually as follows. So the ordinance starts off. Typically, with any ordinance, you have an intended purpose. And the intended purpose should be, the foundation of the ordinance, explaining why the ordinance was adopted, and lay out the specific issues that have been identified and what the ordinance is intended to accomplish. And so I did try to put one together and try to create a balance between what I heard at the various meetings. So as we go through the ordinance specifically, we can talk about that more in depth. Then definitions, it is the goal specifically to identify terms that are unique or have a specific meaning in the context of the ordinance. In this ordinance, some specific and unique terms that are identified are the short-term rental business unit, short-term rental personal unit, single family district cap. You may remember from our review of the other ordinances, some had that delineation between a personal unit and a business unit. Where a personal unit was more of a, just a temporary kind of use, maybe a couple of weeks by a homeowner, and or it was an accessory dwelling unit, and that was the consensus to incorporate that into the ordinance, where a personal business unit would be more something that's rented out continually year round. In the single family district, that's a term that's defined. In this definition, the single family district would include the traditional residential district, the waterfront residential district, and the rural estate district. So those are our three single family districts that would be defined as a single family district in this ordinance. And then the concept of the cap is defined in there, and then this provides the ability of this commission to establish a cap if that is what they want to do. Licensing, that's 53, and this specifies what needs a license and the process to obtain a license. In this ordinance, the business units in the single family districts would require a license. And the objective in having that license is more for the impact of housing, because that would provide you to establish a cap in those districts if the commission determines that there's too many units and they wanted to set a cap in those single family districts. In the other districts, a license would not be required, but they would still be subject to the regulations of the ordinance in regards to parking and occupancy and issues of noise and trash and all those other kinds of nuisance type of thing. As I was thinking about it, it may be valuable to have a registration process for everybody. So even though you may not have a license requirement, at least have them registered so you know where they are and have contact information for them. So that may be something that should be incorporated. The fee or the license application form will require contact information, local agent, for the owner and local agent, the location of the unit, the floor plan of the unit, the diagram showing parking for the unit. The applicant will need to certify that the rental has working smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, insurance, and the city's good visitor guide, which will be developed as part of this, would also need to be provided to each guest. Licenses would be available on an annual basis and could be capped by the commission. The commission has the discretion to set the cap or none at all, and may annually review and adjust the cap if desired. The fee for the license would be set by the city commission. The permit fees must be based on cost involved to process the permit. And these costs, would include the outside services, such as if we had a contract with Granicus to do the address identification, compliance monitoring, and some other things. And then, of course, the time and materials, staff, process, permits would all be recoupable as part of that permit fee. The regulations, the specific regulations that would apply to all short-term rentals, the ordinance require that all short-term rentals have a local contact agent and contact information be posted in the application. The section references applicable codes and ordinances, which include building, health, safety, and nuisance. This section establishes the maximum occupancy for short-term rental, which would be 2 persons per bedroom, plus 2 for each additional floor. So if you have a 3-bedroom ranch, you could have 6 people in the bedroom and 2, so it would be a total of 8. So 2 floors, 2 for each additional. Violation of penalties. This section establishes the violation of ordinance as a municipal civil infraction, distinguishes violations for property owners and tenants, and that each can be issued civil infraction. So if the tenant is violation of a noise ordinance, the tenant could get a citation. If the owner, provided incorrect information or advertised incorrectly, advertising 8 people, but they got 12 staying there, that would be a violation of the owner. So it's a state issue between the two. And a tiered system for property owner violations provides that the first violation is direct warning, the second would be issues of a citation, and the revoke of the license on the third violation. There's an appeals process, so if a license is revoked, the owner has the ability to appeal that, and we'll put the notice in the hearing for that, and the appeal will be made to the short-term rental appeals board. I would recommend using the zoning board of appeals for that responsibility instead of creating some new board. I think they're well trained to be able to consider that kind of determination. The conflict and severability, that is standard language in pretty much every ordinance. Basically, it says if there is conflicting ordinances with this ordinance would supersede, or if part of the ordinance is found to be illegal or not illegal, but unenforceable, it can be severed, and you don't have, and the rest of it would still be valid. And then the enactment that's just ordinance with our chart. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of the ordinance and its layout and contents. So if you have any questions now.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Who establishes the city's good visitors guide?
That was a draft of my creations that I was using others for kind of a foundation of that. Of course, that's a document that we can work on, as a committee, or whoever. But basically, the intent is to get information into the hands of the tenants and kind of let them know what the rules are and make them aware of those kinds of activities that are regulated in some way.
Okay. Scott, go ahead.
Okay, so want to go through the ordinance specifically now? Okay, so the intent and purpose of 51, and that's a highlighted section in here. It says the city commission finds the rental of dwelling units in the city of Orange City provide value to our local economy, but also can bring with it negative effects to the year-round quality of neighborhoods, housing supply, and safety. The city commission has enacted this regulatory ordinance to strike a regulatory balance between the interests of the community, residents, business owners, visitors, and property. We're in discussion of that particular intent.
So the sections that you highlighted in yellow, is that just like up for play? Or
Well, no, I thought these were probably issues where we're most likely to have some discussion. And
Gotcha.
we're free to discuss anything in here.
right?
But that was just kind of what I thought, that the commission wanted to make sure.
At this point, that seems fine to me.
I agree with it. That's why we're here.
We could go through the whole thing and then come back.
Yeah, or, well, if you have questions on each of them, we'll go ahead and take them.
Yeah.
Just one comment, it says, and health and safety of who, I think it's, you know, have some words in there, or some verbiage that would make that correct. Just some words in that name. Safety of our community,
Public.
of public, yeah. And
Definitions, so some of these are pretty standard definitions, like accessory dwelling units, bedroom, calendar year, a cap, That would be the maximum number of licensed short-term rental business units allowed in the city. So, this ordinance is being brought forward with the idea of a cap. So I wasn't clear whether that was a direction the commission was going to go or not. But I put it in there to make that, have that ability. Compensation, dwelling units, enforcement officer, standard. The good business guide, again, this is a concept that we see in others and thought it was a valuable thing to put into this one. License holder, that the owner applies and receives a short-term rental license from the city. And then, local agent would be an individual designated to oversee the operations of the rental and be the contact person. In here, it has they need to be within 60 minutes. I did have a discussion with Mr. Parker today, and he brought up a point that might be a little far. That hour away is quite a ways, and suggested a 30-minute time for that. And I would agree with that. I think someone probably needs to be a little more local than an hour. That could be short.
But if it's an emergency, you're not using that chain.
Yeah, it's an emergency, you're gonna call the police and whatnot, but if like a person is staying at a short-term rental, and they have a problem with the rental, I can't take the garbage out or something, so, that person should be available relatively quickly to assist that, or there's some kind of function of the dwelling that's not operable, have to be able to get there in time.
At our May 5th meeting, you provided us with this, 15 out of 15 of those local municipalities had a local contact requirement.
Yeah.
Do you know what their distance was?
Well, I took this from the ordinance, so somebody had an hour, but I have seen less than that. I have seen 30 minutes.
As far as the local agent in the neighborhood, would they be provided contact information for that local contact around the short-term rental?
Well, a way to do that is to have a placard on, the short-term rental that identifies who that contact person is. Of course, that information is part of the city application process, and they could call us and we could tell you who that is.
I would see it being at least.
Yeah, of course, it was gonna, the list would have to be with them as well.
And kind of following up on a point that was made at our last meeting, I mean, as you're looking at like the 60 minutes or count on a cap or whatever it is, you could set it at 60 or 30 minutes or whatever, but you're always gonna have that ability to change it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can find out from some experience, 60 minutes is great, or no, we're having problems that it's too long, or, whatever the number is. So just keep in mind that you're gonna have the flexibility to make adjustments as if you adopt something as time goes on and you learn from it.
How many of the other ordinances had this issue then?
I would have to be back on that. I recollection of it.
Yeah, because I like to know that too, because it's staying, my experience is staying in short-term rentals in the state of Florida, and they're very slow. So pretty much within 24 hours when they close down. So place is burning down with all.
Okay. All right. Next, occupancy. This is the maximum number allowed, and that's outlined in the regulations. Occupant is individual 24 months or age older, and you can select that age. You can determine another one that should be an occupant. The single family districts that I touched on before, the traditional residential district, real estate district, and waterfront residential district. And then the short-term rental business unit and the short-term rental person unit. So, delineating two types of users. And then transfer is the last definition. So section 15.3 is the licensing. So an owner of a short-term rental business unit located within any single-family district in the city of Lawrence City shall not rent a dwelling unit to another person for less than 30 days at a time, unless the owner has obtained a short-term rental license to that. This specifically identifies business units in those three residential districts. So right now, we have about 80 total, or probably about 90 total in those three districts. And a portion of those are probably accessory dwelling units, or maybe some that fall under that personal unit. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at in the number. If you think of how many licenses would we need today, that's about what we would need.
Scott, is this where you would add them to, just any short-term rental registered, any short-term rental in any point?
Yeah, I would recommend that be incorporated in this area and probably change that section to licensing and registration. And then just have a registration requirement for all short-term rentals. And you got a list of them, you know where they're at. And then the licensing for those specific ones to, you know, limit the number.
I guess, so I was holding off, but I guess I'll ask my question now. I'm confused if we're gonna go with licensing, then why wouldn't we license in all the districts? I don't understand. And why would the CBD and you know, be any different?
Well, the concept of a license is to enforce a cap. By limiting the number of licenses, you can enforce a cap on those three residential districts.
I get that.
Right, and then the registration process would just be to have a list of everybody. So we know where they're at.
I guess I'm not in favor of penalizing one over
Okay.
another. Would be my suggestion. We're doing it.
Yeah, if we're doing the registration process, would you feel that we would still have to contract with the Granicus or a third-party agency?
I think if you're gonna have any kind of ordinance that has any kind of registration or licensing aspect to it, you're almost gonna have some kind of contract with somebody that's gonna identify the items. It's almost impossible to use websites daily and identify, you know, 180 that we got. So,
But for our $6,000, we've got it.
yeah, right, that's part of the
So
deal.
that'd be fine if we had to move forward.
Well, that contract ends in July.
I understand.
And they did give a quote for the same amount we paid last year for next year. And that money is recouped through licenses, and if you want to register, you could have a registration. And if you want to have compliance monitoring, which identifies units that are being rented and don't have a license, and then gives a letter, sends a letter to them, you know, that's an additional cost. So for that package, you're looking at about $10,000. So if you have, let's say, $100 application fee for 90 units for license, that's $9,000. And then you have a $50 application fee for, you know, the remainder of the registrations, that's another like $4,500 or so. So that covers basically the Granicus contract that you'll need. And probably close to covering, you know, the time and materials to process the permit. So, you know, I think the fee can be modest if this is the way you want to go. You want discussion on it? All right, so all terms, short-term rental business units located in any single family district shall be licensed. The advertiser or rental of an unlicensed short-term rental business unit is prohibited. Advertising for licensees must include the license number, maximum occupancy of the unit. Licenses shall be issued by a calendar year after the initial registration has been implemented. Short-term rental licenses shall expire at the end of each calendar year and must be renewed for current calendar year. Initial registration period begins at the time of the adoption of the ordinance, it runs until December 1st. Any discussion in those items? Application form, the person seeking license under this ordinance shall submit a complete application certified to be true. The application shall include all the information specified in the short-term application form and any other information deemed reasonably necessary to determine whether the short-term rental standards and regulations under this ordinance have been met. The license application form shall collect not less than the following information and other items the city may deem necessary for implementation of this ordinance. Name, address, email, phone number of property owner and the local agent. The street address of the dwelling unit along with identification if more than one dwelling unit shares the same street address. Number of bedrooms in each dwelling unit and current floor plan and total number of allowed occupants per this ordinance. Identification of the number of available parking spaces and a diagram of parking available for guests, short-term rental business unit. A signed statement certifying the following: each bedroom has a working smoke alarm, each floor has a working carbon monoxide detector, and then the short-term rental business unit's local agent will check those devices not less than every 6 months. The property has all necessary insurance for around the unit. The property owner or local agent will provide at least one copy of the city's good business guide to the renters each time the dwelling is rented, and a list of all websites and other media where the unit is advertised. License applications for short-term rental business units shall be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. The cap of the total number of short-term rental business licenses issued per year may be set by a resolution of the city commission on or before the first city commission meeting in December. And any changes shall be made on or before the first city commission meeting in subsequent year. So this cap, if established, can be reviewed every year as part of this process. The application fee, an application shall be accompanied with the application fees established by the city fee schedule. And I kind of went over what you can anticipate if we move forward. Complete applications shall be reviewed in the order in which they were received by the city. Receipt of an application by the city does not mean the application is considered complete. If an application submits an incomplete application, they are not guaranteed a license. Short-term rental applications shall not be considered accepted or complete until the city designating deems it complete. Furthermore, if the applicant fails to provide all information required by this ordinance, and or fails to pay the required fee, the application shall be deemed incomplete and may be denied on that basis. Once deemed complete, if an application complies with all standards and regulations of the ordinance and a license is available, the city shall approve short-term rental license. Questions about that?
For 10, until the city deems it to be complete, who are you recommending, or what is the preliminary?
Well, I was assuming the planning department would be the contact person for applications and licenses. In that business.
And then 6E, is that very similar? Is that basically the affidavit process?
Yeah, that's a form, an affidavit form, is part of that application process. They'd have to sign it, affirming, these various things.
What would be the penalty for lying on the affidavit? Would it be?
Civil infraction, again, we get to the violation of penalties and a couple.
Skip, would there be personnel, I guess I would rather, it might be better to have somebody inspect those, smoke alarms versus just trusting somebody.
That was a question at the last meeting, and it was kind of the consensus of the commission and inspections were not to be part of this, and it's more to have these affirmed by this affidavit. If there is an inspection process that the commission desires, I would anticipate you would need a higher fee to cover the cost of those inspections and determine who's going to do those. You know, if it's, you know, fire department going in and checking, you know, all those things, or myself, or building official, whatever.
In our rationale for this route, to pursue this route is to take care of our liability as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, you know, it's common. I mean, there's probably half of the ordinances we look at, you know, they've done it this way. And, you know, I think it's a prudent way to go to begin with. You know, personally, I have not received any issues or complaints from any short-term rental renter saying they felt unsafe or there was issues with the building or anything like that. So I don't think it's a big problem right now. But again, if we get lots of complaints and issues and we want to change this, then we can put it in an inspection process.
part of it was too that to be successful, the owner to be successful needed to take care of the property.
Yes, and it's in their own best interest to provide a quality place to stay. So, section 15.4 regulations. So, number one, short-term rental local agent, all dwelling units used for short-term rental shall have a designated local agent as defined by this ordinance. Two, contact information posted, a notice shall be posted in a prominent location within any dwelling used for short-term rental, stating in easily readable font the name of the local agent and 24-hour telephone number at which the local agent can be reached. Codes, all dwelling units used as short-term rental must meet all applicable residential building, health department nuisance and safety codes as necessary to protect the safety of occupants. All short-term rental owners and tenants are subject to the state of Plain City General Code ordinances. Maximum occupancy, short-term rentals units shall be permitted, maximum occupancy, 2 persons per bedroom plus 2 persons per finished legal floor. Described in this chapter and may be verified on inspection. So, did put that in there just in case someone says, you know, I can have 8 bedrooms, I got all these people, we have the ability to verify that.
Is a finished basement considered a floor level?
We can make that a definition, and if you want it at floor level or not. Typically, they're not. But I think it would be good to define.
Might want to be careful with regards to basements, you know. Only have bedrooms and those if you have egress windows and things of that nature. So you don't want to be setting up somebody for a problem.
They come with building code bill.
Yeah.
To comply with building code.
What's that point? So at that point in time, you could say, well, I gotta finish this. So I get whatever.
Yeah.
2 additional people in what we're about.
Right. Finished bedroom with the egress window. So, any other comments on the regulations?
Mayor? I did see a hand in the audience. I didn't know if and when you wanted to address that or if you wanted to talk about when you're going to handle those.
Yeah, we were hoping to go through it and then we'll get to it. If you could just remember your questions and comments.
All right, violations and penalties. A person who violates any provision of this chapter may be responsible for a civil infraction state on which any violation of the chapter continues may constitute a separate offense and subject to the penalties as a separate offense. Tenants of short-term rentals are responsible for the city, Point City General Code of ordinance violations such as not limited to noise, fireworks, trash, that's parking. Property owners of short-term rentals are responsible for violations relating to false or misleading statements in the registration process, And as such, item has been on short-term patient, local agent not responding to complaint or call within a specified time period and advertising and or hosting greater occupancy than principal. The property owner or tenant has failed to comply with any provision of this ordinance, specifically section 15.4 regulations. Short-term rental licenses may be revoked under the following circumstances. First owner violation within the calendar year shall result in written warning. Second owner violation within the same calendar year shall result in a municipal fine as set by resolution of the city commission. And a third owner violation within the same calendar year shall result in revocation of the license until the end of the calendar year. A minimum 14-day notice will be given to an owner for any revocation as of Monday following the notice of the third violation. No additional bookings may be made of the rental through the year end. If there is a short-term rental license waiting list, the revocation of the license will cause the property owner placed at the bottom of the waiting list. An owner may appeal any decision to revoke a license. It's listed in section 56. And if a complaint files a false report, they're subject to applicable. So for filing a false report, for all complaints not required, immediate police response complaints are encouraged to document the violation, photographs and or video of encroaching on the property, to report the violation, including any documentation with the same. And then section 15.6 is the appeal process. Upon determination by the enforcement officer that registration of dwelling is subject to revocation pursuant to 55, the enforcement officer shall issue a notice to the owner, agent, and all property owners within the feet of the registered short-term rental stating that the city intends to revoke the license. The notice shall inform the owner and the local agent the right to hearing to show cause as to why the license should not be revoked. If the hearing is requested and he is paid within 14 days of service of the notice, the city shall schedule a hearing before the short-term rental appeals board established by the commission and notify the owner and agent in writing at the time and place of the hearing. At the time of the hearing, the owner and agent may present evidence that the requirements for revocation are not satisfied, or that the property owner and agent should not be held responsible for any of the three requisite violations, extending circumstances. Extending circumstances may include circumstances that the owner or owner's agent could not reasonably anticipate to prevent or could not reasonably control. Short-term rentals appeals board shall independently determine whether there is competent material substantial evidence to establish a violation, whether there is competent material and substantial evidence establishing that extended circumstances exist. Any questions? And then again, the conflict and severability, those are pretty standard language. Any ordinance or the enactment is just charter provisions for the adoption.
Well, thank you, Scott. Any final questions? Thank you, Scott. Okay, so here's the opportunity for questions or comments. Each person will be limited to 5 minutes. If you move forward, please, and take your name and address and move forward. First. Second.
I'll go. Larry Shute at 414 High Street. Also a member of the planning commission. I brought this up to city commission and the planning commission probably about 2.5 years ago. We really had to start regulating these. And back then I had counted up maybe 100 total in the city, and maybe 40 with traditional residential.
I just feel strongly that I live in Boyne City, this is great neighborhoods. I like to know my neighbors, I like to know who these people are on my block. If I had a family, I'd love to know who the neighbors are before I let my kids go out to play. Okay, I think the traditional residential district, TRD, should be treated differently from all the other districts you've started. But the waterfront residential district, that's larger homes on busier streets, should be treated differently than the side streets. And survey I did back in 2019, September 2019, the vast majority of short-term rentals was 1,200 to 1,500 square feet and less. Those are affordable homes. You've got the goal to increase housing availability. If you continually chewing up 25, 15 homes a year, or especially in the traditional residential district, are those being built? No, they're not. They're not being replaced. These are homes that families cannot have, that employees for the industrial park, good paying jobs, year-round jobs cannot have. Okay, so I think you should separate the traditional residential district. The bed and breakfast ordinance used to have minimum spacing of 500 feet. You should consider something like that, 200 to 500 feet minimum spacing, to keep one per block safe. Instead of cluster all around a certain area and area with sidewalks, walkable, etc. You've got further out areas that are not going to be rented, done as much, but space them out. Space them out. I also believe that short-term rentals should not be homestead. If they are not being occupied, they are not a primary residence. Okay. The owner of the short-term rental should be the first to know. I'm all in favor of posting something on the outside. There can be some intimidation if someone, if the short-term renters know that you are reporting them. There's 8 people in there, say, hey, they can do all sorts of things in your yard. Okay. Yeah, that's, I think I agree with licensing in all districts. But the whole challenge with the short-term rentals also, people will come up here and tell you they're great business opportunities. Yes, they are great business opportunities for the owners of it. Now, for the other businesses, it's 2 months a year primarily, maybe some weekends in the winter, but primarily 2 months a year. Those houses sit vacant for 10 months a year. Nobody there. The businesses in town would love to have year-round customers, not just 2 months a year, not just winter weekends. The jobs they provide for cleaning these things, maintaining them, they're primarily seasonal. We've got full-time jobs that they need employees. We should try and limit short-term rentals, especially in the TRD. When I first started tracking, it was less than 5%. Now it's over 5%. There's got to be a cap somewhere between 5 and 10% of the housing unit. Multifamily condos on the water, yeah, fine, go. Short-term rentals, let them go. But the traditional residential district is very different in that it wants to be a neighborhood. I don't agree with the +2 persons per floor. I think that's definitely a little bit more crowding. Let's see what else. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I just want to see more people in town year round, not just empty houses.
Thanks for breaking the ice.
doesn't the state of Michigan establish the homestead tax credit? Like,
Yeah, you know,
we have no authority, this commission has no authority over that, correct?
you would have, yeah.
I'm Mindy Weaver-Wise, I'm at 523 Southeast Street. I'm a property management company owner and also rental. And we have our own rentals in that business as well. Last time we met, it seemed the consideration of the board was to not make regulations for regulation's sake. That was my gathering from our last meeting. And I feel like this ordinance that we're putting forward is a little bit more in line with regulation for regulation's sake. I would like to request that we move ahead slowly with the idea that we can always add on should we need to. I would like to see everyone have to register. I think that's a great thing. We just had a tree fall down from another vacation rental into another property we manage, and I had a hard time tracking down that owner. So I could have called the city and gotten their phone number quicker. That would have been great, but it all ended up being resolved okay. So if everyone just registered, that would be lovely. The things that the city or that I was hearing and the city had recognized were noise and parking were both big issues. We currently have things that our police department that can handle those issues. And it's my recollection that that has not been used in the past. So to create an ordinance to take care of the issues that we are reporting and it's not even being used now, it seems like maybe that would be a great step. So let's register the short-term rentals. And then if we were to have complaints that are called into the city, let's say, hey, we have the police here. Please call the police. Here's the person that owns that property or the person that manages that property. Give them a call and see if they can help you out with the parking issue or things like that. In the 3 years that we've been managing the properties, we have 11 within the district. We have no complaints, no calling of the police, no calling of neighbors to my cell phone. Haven't had any. So I would really like to see us slowly take an approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi there, I'm Nicole Hopewell. I also sit on the planning commission. I reside at 907 Wilson Street. I just had a couple of questions in regards to if this is enacted for those existing short-term rental owners, how long will they have before will they have to cease business before they start or while they go through the license process? Or is there going to be a window? Because it says it goes into effect within 15 days, but there's nothing that kind of talks about the turnaround time for how long to expect for the license process. And if that's going to go through the planning commission, my history there is that it can be a multi-step process. And so I'm just trying to give both neighbors and owners an idea in regards to, because it's a loss of revenue, but it also could potentially omit any problems in areas that are having it. I'm going to go off of Larry. I really think that the neighborhood feel is good. But I also know that I like to use short-term rentals when I go and I can't always get a waterfront. So offering some in that area is a good thing for those that may not have the means for a waterfront visit. And then here. On the cap, I had questions in regards to, I know this isn't something that's necessarily written in, but it gives the option for maybe we look at the percentage, not just for overall housing, but in relation to either the seasonal or non-homestead versus homestead, because that could give a more clear indication of whether or not this is taking away one of our goals of affordable housing.
Hey, Cole, can you clarify that last statement?
I don't know what you wanted to do.
For the homestead?
Yeah, the caps, you're saying?
Well, when it was mentioned about providing a cap potentially for the number of short-term rentals, and with the documentation that Scott gave was in regards to total housing, so 6% of the total houses available in Boyne City. Well, that's, it provides great information, but if we're trying to provide, say, affordable housing and other aspects of TRD and whatnot, then how much of this is in TRD do we have homestead houses versus maybe non-homestead houses? So really it kind of helps show how big the problem is in my eyes.
I heard you, right? I just want to make sure.
And then just the other part,
Yeah,
if this gets adopted,
the window of licensing, Scott, are you in a position to answer that? question?
Yeah, actually, personal experience of how Evangeline Township did it. They had their, when they adopted the ordinance, they had kind of
Could you
a,
stand up and talk?
oh, sure. What they did is after the ordinance was adopted, they sent basically notifications to all the people that were identified on their list. They kind of gave them a grace period and say, okay, this ordinance is on the books now, you need to get a license, just provide them. And then gave them a window of opportunity to get those licenses. It was a good generous period, it's 3-4 months. And then they gave everybody a license and they kind of did it at the end of the year and the licenses became effective on January 1. So they're all there set for the next year. That's how they ended their first. That's why I wrote my, go through the end of the year, because Scott was saying, if we did anything, on a calendar basis, so.
yeah,
Can't
once
start
you,
that way through the calendar.
yeah, January 1st to December 31st.
Carl, someone got ahead of you.
My name's Dan Wood, our residence is 1107 Lake Shore Drive. My wife and I did do short-term rental for a number of years, the last 4 or 5. We switched to long-term rental, we have 2 rental homes. The one comment that I would make is the bedroom size limiting to, because you could have a bunk room, large bedroom that could accommodate 2 sets of bunks. I think that restriction needs to get down to what the practical square foot of the room. You know, when I was a kid, we're 4 boys in our bedroom, 2 bunk bedroom. It wasn't a big one, so. But in terms of, I mean, a better option may be considering the number of bathrooms. You know, as far as the number of people that the house will handle. So, and as far as homestead, maybe a lot of you do know that, but I think it's worth noting. The IRS permits you to rent your homestead 2 weeks without any tax implications. So that would be a totally normal thing to do if you had a rental home.
Thank you. Carl?
I guess the issue of homestead has been, I'm sorry, Carl Van Dalen, 725 Lake Park Drive. And I'd like to, first of all, talk about the homestead exemption. These are basically commercial buildings, if indeed they are short-term rentals. I think that as part of the licensing and the certification process, we require the fact that these are not homesteaded properties, and that basically goes, they demonstrate that these are no longer homesteaded and they pay the fair share of taxes with respect to it. Enforcement of the licensing requirements, self-certification, year 1, that's great. How do we know that they are truly carrying the proper amount of insurance? How do we enforce the licensing and the self-certification. And we have no enforcement record mechanism with respect to this ordinance. And lastly, I'd like to consider the fact that each of these short-term rentals actually provide a bond with respect to, if we're gonna have them self-certified, that these truly do have met the requirements in terms of, CO detectors, any other type of safety issues such as a wobbly type of handrail. I mean, who does the safety inspection of a rental property? And with that, I'm going to give someone else some additional time.
Anyone else? Okay. Monica, before you start, if anyone else is interested, just save time, you can kind of get you over here. Ready to come out, if that, you're comfortable doing it.
I'm Monica Ross, and I'm from 109 East Michigan Avenue, and I'm also on the planning commission. It appears that it's inevitable that we're going to have a licensing on these properties. One thing that Larry Shute brought up is that he would like to see more residential in fewer rentals in the traditional residential district. Before short-term rentals became popular, those homes sat vacant. I personally owned a home in Boyne City since 1999. I didn't move up here for many years. I never rented it. It was my vacation home. And I don't know the exact number, but I believe it's about 35% of our homes are not homestead. Maybe it's higher than that. So just thinking that we're gonna pass this and it's gonna create a wealth of residential homes for long-term people it's not gonna happen. People still wanna come up here. I cared so much about coming up here and coming to my little 2-bedroom house with no basement and no garage, that I paid as much in taxes for that home, non-homestead, as I did for my 4-bedroom home with a 3-car garage downstate. So just thinking that by putting these restrictions on homeowners, we're going to cure the problem, it's not going to happen. It's a nice thought. I have no problem with health and safety issues, but if we're going to open that can of worms, why aren't we requiring that long-term rentals have health and safety issues addressed? Just a question, I'm throwing it out there. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if we impose that same licensing on long-term rentals to assure that the people that rent those homes long-term are having fire extinguishers and things like that in these properties, my guess is that that property owner is going to pass those fees on to their tenant, which means we're going to compound the problem of high rents. That's a business, just like short-term rentals are a business. I'm just asking you to think about it. I'm not forming an opinion one way or the other, to think about it. Another thing that was brought up is that, and I believe it was in what Scott presented on the screen, that they have to comply with all the existing parking, noise, and all those issues. If I don't know too many vacationers that will go to your website, search your ordinances, and find out what those are. If you want to have that in there, part of your licensing requirement should be that those ordinances are identified and easily available for that person to reference as they're renting it. How can you expect them to, I mean, first of all, we've asked the police department, and they said there hasn't been any more issues than there are with anybody else living in this town. So we're trying to put a regulation on something that's not a problem. And if we want to do that, that's fine. If that, you have the power to do whatever you want. You have the power, and you people at this table have the power to levy these rules on property owners in this city. And if you want to do that, you should at least consider that, some of these things. Another thing, you said that you can take away their license if they violate something. And then if they violate, they're not playing by the rules, that's fine. If you take away their license and you've already spelled out how they can appeal that. If that appeal takes 3 months or 6 months, and they've lost the revenue for those months, who's going to be responsible for paying back the revenue? Is the city going to take on that responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Tom Parker, I live at 7 Front Street. Just for a little background, my wife and I have owned short-term rentals at Point Mountain for over 10 years. We also actively rent. Currently, we've utilized Northern Michigan Escapes, Timber North, local rental agencies, so we're doing those as well. I also like to compliment Mr. McPherson and his commission for putting together this ordinance and for the packet that was put together from the last meeting. That's a lot of information that was gathered in what I think is a relatively short time, and it's a very thorough package, so compliments to you on that. Also want to support the concept of the personal use. I think that's a very good allowance. A lot of us might have family and friends coming up, and if our neighbor happens to have, their dwelling available, or we look at the Harborage, another unit available, I think that's a nice allowance that doesn't get people tied up in a commercial for-profit short-term rental kind of activity. As far as, I think the cap, I'm supportive of cap. I think it goes back to comments that were made in previous meetings. What do we want our community to look like in 20 years? To what percentage of the community, the residential community, do we want to be short-term rentals? And so I think, a distinction needs to be made there. I think probably somewhere around the current levels might be a good place to start. And then also this concept of density might be something to think about too. To what extent, block by block or some other way, just a consideration of density, especially in the single family type areas. I support the licensing process, but I think it's also with licensing now, the city is also kind of maybe this needs to consider, does that now, if it's licensed, does that assume some blessing or liability potentially on the city? So maybe to Mr. Lassiter's point, the inspections might include, physical inspections to just ensure, the safety and well-being of the tenants, liability for the owner, liability potentially for the city. So, and those resources and needs could be part of the licensing. As far as contact information for the property manager, there may want to be consideration of that being posted on the city website, so that a neighbor doesn't have to go to the plaque in front of the house to try to figure out how to call in a noise complaint or some other complaint. Likewise, like I said, we're tenants as well too. When the washing machine is overflowing and you can't find a shut-off valve for the water in the house, it'd be nice to know who to call quickly. And that's also why I supported the 30-minute time versus the 60-minute
you know, when something's going wrong, if it's a noise complaint, you know, and out at midnight, an hour is a long time to wait for somebody to respond. Likewise, when the washing machine's overflowing, an hour is a long time to wait. So I think it just makes sure that there's a physical closeness. And I think the property managers who have gotten up and spoken at previous meetings, who are right there, who do a really good job of managing, who have no complaints, you know, I think that's something that is very reasonable. You know, my compliments to the folks that really do it well. Because we've been on both sides of that too, the ones that don't do it well. Talked about the physical inspections. And then the multifamily district, Mr. McPherson and I had a discussion about that. So Mr. Moody, to your point, you know, is it a matter of fairness or unfairness? I think the point that Mr. McPherson made was multi-dwelling units in the city tend not to be impactful to the availability of single-family affordable housing, and therefore may not be in consideration. But I could certainly see going either way, you know, just because where we live, you know, at Harvard, that could be something that could be considered for licensing as well. So those are my comments. Thank you.
There's about 3 people.
Hi, Alexis Brackle. I'm at 133 West Michigan. I just have 2 quick comments. First, regarding the plaque, I too think that just posting that online would be sufficient. I don't see why we need to post personal contact information on a plaque on the exterior of a home, especially for homes where myself, I come up as often as I can. I spent, since I was 3 years old, I've been coming to this lake every summer, my grandparents' house. My family also has a home on the other side of the lake now, and now my husband and I do with our 2 children. We come up as often as we can, but we rent when we are unable to come up to be able to afford a home, so we can have that generational return. And I know many friends that I grew up with downstate have done similar things, not just here, but in other lake communities around Michigan. And I think that is really special. It's special for families. And it's sentimental for myself. But having a plaque on the front of the house when you have little kids running around, and maybe there isn't somebody that has their best interests at heart running around that then has your name, your phone number, can talk to your kids using your family's name. I just think that in and of itself is kind of a safety concern, and that information can be posted online and then it can be found there. My other quick comment is just around the taxes. I know somebody else brought that up as well. I have a small house on the lake here, about 1,700 square feet. My house downstate is twice that size. I pay more taxes here for this house than I do downstate in Grosse Pointe. So I feel as though I am contributing to the community, to have nice neighborhoods, to have sidewalks and all the things that we would want any family community to have. I feel as though I am definitely contributing to that through my contribution in tax money and the various other programs around the city that I've spent money donating to. That's all.
We're here once again. We're family, my wife Jane and I, 33 Anderson Road here in Hawaii City. We own 2 vacation rental properties. We also own 2 long-term rental properties. And our son owns a vacation rental that we manage for them. We also manage our own properties. I just want to make a couple of comments. And one is to the point of the licensing, which a lot of people have talked about. And I agree, it doesn't seem very fair to license some short-term rentals and not all, particularly the ones that are multi. districts. There's 51 of those units between the land use and the harborage. I think those are the two properties that are in the multifamily district. If they're gonna operate short-term rental, my feeling is they need to be licensed the same as everybody else. What that fee is going to be, that's what you set, I think $100 low for application fee, by the way, I don't mind paying more. I don't mind paying more for each one of our properties, that's that important. Occupancy, that's been covered a couple of times, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things. The way the ordinance or the proposal has, for example, if I own, I don't have it, but if I own a two-bedroom, two-story property that was 800 square feet, with your proposal, I can have, what, up to 10 people? Or 8 people, again, 8 people in a two-bedroom house, that's 800 square feet with one bath. And that doesn't seem logical to me. That's overcrowding, number one. Number two, it allows maybe 2 families to share in that property. So you've got more cars, maybe they're bringing the boats with them. I don't know. It just adds to the overcrowding situation that there is. I happen to go on, our property is all listed on Verbo. It's the only site that we use. And I'm on Verbo probably 4 times a week, checking our own properties as well as all the properties in the area. So I'm pretty well versed in what's in the neighborhood and what's in the city. Would it surprise anyone here to know that on Verbo's page, if you do a filter for, you want a property for 8 people, you do a filter on Verbo and it brings up all the properties in Point City that will accommodate a yes. Of the first 50 properties that show up, 13 of them accommodate more than what the current proposed ordinance would agree to. There's a 2-bedroom house with 8 people, 3 times, 4-bedroom property that sleeps 13, 4-bedroom property right downtown, excuse me, that sleeps 13. It's out of hand on the occupancy. So you really gotta look at that hard. And the two people per bedroom plus 2 per floor is not the way to go. I don't have a solution. Maybe it's strictly 2 people per bedroom. Maybe it's plus 1 extra for the house. There's got to be some reasonable amount that you can look at. Just go do it yourself. Go on Airbnb or go on Verbo and do a search and see what's in Point City, because all those 13 properties would have to be licensed also. And they're already in violation if that was passed. You can't be able to handle that situation. Let's see. I guess that's really the big thing is the occupancy. Your proposal is way too big. As shown by the number of properties that just pack people in. I guess one last comment, and it goes to the fact that maybe some vacation rentals do only rent for the summer. My wife and I rent ours year round. We're available to rent for over 305 days out of the year. We shut down in April and 3 weeks in November, so we can take vacations. So the remaining 310 days that we're open, we are rented for 250 days in all 3 of our properties. So we do bring a lot of guests into the area. They spend a lot of money. It's just something that we enjoy doing, managing them ourselves, like I said. But there needs to be some regulations. I'm all for them. And I want to thank everybody that's put time and effort. Just think about a couple things. Thanks.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yours.
Go ahead.
Sharon Kemp, 816 Lower Lake Drive. I also would like to thank the committee for the time that they've put in working on this proposal. There's several things that I agree that I'm in favor of. I do like the fact that a rental should be licensed, and I feel that all your rentals in your community should be licensed. I am a landlord myself. I still have my home downstate, which happens to be an upper lower duplex, so I technically have 2 units. And I have to be not only licensed by the city, but I do have to have an inspection on both units. And I pay for 2 inspections, even though it's 1 home. So I would strongly encourage the ordinance to include an inspection. And it can be, I had to move my steps on my home 2 inches because they weren't the proper regulation height by ordinance, even though I had already been inspected previously when I bought the home. So I know ordinances change, but those are all safety issues, including handrails, electrical outlets, besides your fire extinguishers and carbon monoxide. For the proposals that you have brought forth this evening, there are a couple that I had comments on. In 15.5, where we talk about ordinance violations, I agree that the landlord and the renter should know what those our city ordinances are. But I would like to have you include something about wood burning fires. I am in the waterfront district, but I'm a teeny little home squeezed in between all these lovely big rentals. And I don't have air conditioning, and I do suffer from asthma. So when my renters across the street have a fire going, I have to close my windows. Number one. Number two, often renters haven't had the experience with a fire, and they don't know how to put a fire out properly. And as soon as the wind comes up, when they've already gone inside, all of a sudden that fire pit's going great guns and there's no one out there and it's almost dark. I agree on the, there should be a limit as far as how many should be in the home, in the bedrooms. I think you should, in your definitions at the beginning, in the real estate market, a bedroom is defined, it has to have a closet. I think that should be in your definition as well, because otherwise, just a room that happened to be in the home could be technically considered a bedroom. So I think you would should add that. Parking of cars. I think there should be a limit on the number of cars that come along with the folks. I know in Florida and other communities where I've rented, there are ordinances on how many cars you can have in the house. I think that should be a consideration. I'm supportive of caps on the number of rentals that should be in a neighborhood. And I think defining the block or a mile distance or something like that, there should be some guidelines to follow to control how many rentals there can be in a specific amount of space. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Sislo. My address is 1261 Lakeshore. And Scott and the commission, again, they did a really good job putting together this preliminary ordinance and taking lots of different opinions and trying to get something that on paper, good job. I don't think it's overly prescriptive. I think you've done a good job setting a balance. I support caps in the single family residential areas. I was glad to see that you're open to doing that. I think that the local agent, there's a way that, and I understand maybe we wouldn't want to post it for anybody to come and read, but a way for the neighbors to have access to that local agent. I know that some of the ordinance in some of the other areas require the local agent name and number to be given to so many neighbors within the area of that rental, or if it's posted on the website, but perhaps not posted in the rental. To that person's point, I support 30 minutes instead of 60 minutes. And just the other night, I think that sometimes we say that we don't call, the police aren't getting called, But just the other night, we had a short-term renter close by that was blasting their music at 12:30 in the morning, and we're not gonna call the police for that, they've got more important things to do. But if we had had the name of the local agent, we could have called them and said, could you ask them to take down? But the real thing that I want to address, standing here, is something that actually Monica brought up at the last meeting, that I thought was a really important point. And that is, along the lake shore, there are some homes that still are not hooked up to the city water system, and they're still on septic. And, for example, in Evelyn Township, their short-term rental ordinance requires for those homes on the septic system to be inspected by the health department to make sure that those homes can support, those businesses can support what they're doing there, and not put the lake in danger. So I think they set the bar pretty well, and I would not want to see our community do anything less. And so for your consideration to add something about that. And then the other question I had was about the fireworks ordinance on the Good Neighbor Guide. And is there anything, this says when you can shoot off fireworks for this, to the point about fire pit or something, is there anything else that we have in a fireworks ordinance about where you can, like not within so many feet of somebody else's home, or not on your deck or your porch? Just, you know, just so that the frat boys, when they come up to a party, they kind of know the rules a little bit more. Thank you.
Hi, Sandy Richard, 5.6 East Lincoln Street. Again, a lot of hard work. Here. Well done, Scott. It's a good beginning. I guess I want to come back to where Larry started at the beginning, because that's pretty much how I feel. Point City special. Point special. I know any other communities. People are drawing here because there's a way to take care of each other. And I really feel strongly that we need to protect that. I'm surprised, I didn't even expect this. We had a 65% increase in SPRs in 5 years, not even 3 years. 2019, now 3 years. You know, it's not good because it's not sustainable. Community fabric is not sustainable. And I think, particularly in a residential district, as Larry said, we have a right to know who it's an expectation for most people when they buy their home. And if they get to a single family dwelling, it's definitely a thing. Yes, Boyne City has always been a seasonal destination, and people have, my family included, in the 1930s. Coming up, it's always had a seasonal dimension to it. But those people became ingrained also in the fabric of the community because of the traditions. And there's a way that they learn to respect. I know I got told, you don't stand on the end of the dock and yell back at the house. You just don't to the house. You don't burn the fire pit. You know, there's accountability that comes with this community, which kind of ties in with what Pam was saying. It's why the police call don't get called. They just deal with it, find their own way, usually. So this is what I'm scared for, and I really think we need to get hard on a cap. I think we need to get hard on licensing. I'm still personally not clear the difference between a personal unit and a business unit. The way the language changes kind of throughout this document. I see SCR personal unit is less than 14 days and everything else is a business unit. Is that clear? Is that true? If it is, then how are you going to know that the personal unit will only use 14 days or less? I think inspection is important. I think the density by district is critical. I couldn't agree more with Carl about non-homesteads. Nowhere in here was there any discussion about putting SCRs on par with hotels who have to collect lodging taxes, sales taxes. So I think that's something I can't believe we overlooked as part of this document. And I could go on with the language, I get into the intent and purpose. I don't know the BLR visitors and their property owners, any balance. This is Point City, most of the people that are here. What's the difference between a property owner and a business owner? I guess it all boils down to protecting the community fabric fundamentally, and anything and everything that can be done in that direction. Maximum number of cars, maximum number of people per square foot, immediate contact person in the community. I think it's important. And if there were a way to, because you can come down with a tight cap that's lower than the number that exists today, and then just let attrition take care of that. Doesn't mean you don't have to stay where it's at, but it would be wonderful if there were specific districts that were declared free for all. The rest of the people who know when they buy in a district that they're buying in a single family district that's not going to be commercialized.
Thank you.
I'm John McKay, and at 6 West Main Street. I live in a condominium building there in the central business district. And concerning the 2 extra people per floor, I don't think that's quite right. And maybe 2 people per bedroom or a square footage might be more appropriate for the number of people. And in our condominium building there, we have several units that have lofts. So the loft would be considered an extra floor, but the loft is not very huge. So it seems like we shouldn't be allowed to have two extra people per floor. And the other thing is, I'm thinking that for the central business district, it's already a permitted use to rent in central business district. So my question is, why should people in the central business district have to get licenses and do registrations? It seems to me that CBD area ought to be treated somewhat differently, since it's already a permitted use.
Just for clarification, that the central business district is not applicable to this ordinance, correct?
This ordinance does not require
The CBD, correct?
a license for that district.
Okay.
This proposed
This is proposed, yeah. Well, I'm James Hill, I'm from 976 Shade Tree Circle, Galesburg, Michigan, 49053. So I'm an outsider, let's go ahead and say that. I'm not a Michigander, I started out in downstate Illinois. So you guys probably remember University of Illinois, was part of 10. Back in the 80s, I had rental property in Urbana, Illinois. And they started putting all these rules and regulations in there for rentals. We had an 11 unit apartment complex, big size building, and they started changing things and kept costing more and more money. It got to the point that people were just leaving. It said, heck, we'll just
go someplace else. So what happened? We had vacant homes there in, Van Illinois, started bringing the price of the homes down because of these vacancies. University of Illinois found places to put people, and they got the more dorms and so forth, so on. You got yourself, when you regulate things, it's like anytime you try to make something right, you're introducing things that can make it worse. You got to consider the fact that going slow, having some regulations is fine, but don't make, you've got what, 16, 17, or 15 points, not 15, but about 10 different sections. You need to take it slow because you can make things worse. When we talk about, well, we're changing the fabrics of Point City, how it's going to be. And, there's still a lot of vacant houses around here. People have so much money. You're not gonna, somebody who makes $50,000 out here is not going to buy a home, probably in the area within, I guess, anything along here. You can't buy a house that's $550,000. So you've already priced them out to here someplace. So you're not helping the person who makes $50,000 a year. And we think you are, because you're not. So I'm just saying that you need to think about what you're doing, and there's consequences to anything you try to do. Like I said, I saw at University of Illinois, or in Urbana, where you buy a steam helm. Their whole idea is to come in and just make things worse. To make the story complete, I lived in the city of Boulder, Colorado for 8 years as a research engineer. And I saw how Boulder kept this, they kept doing the same high density housing, which is a stupid idea. But anyway, that's the side point. But what happens is that you change the fabric just by doing that. So anything you guys do here, this commission will change the fabric one way or another. You may think you change it for good, but you guys look at what happens 15, 20 years down the road. So don't just look 5 years down the road and say, well, this sounds good. But being a research engineer is what I was trained when I went to University of Illinois myself, is that you try something out and you see what happens. Sometimes you don't see the effects right away. You see them, they're down the road. So don't think that what you're doing here tonight or in the next 6 months when you pass whatever you decide to pass on this, the regulations you're putting in here, they could cause effects that are worse than we thought they would be. You say, let's say you cap it at 50 or cap it at 5%. Now you have, let's say, instead of having, I don't know how many, what's the number of homes are sold right now. Let's say instead of not having 10 homes sold, 2 years from now, I got 30 homes not sold. They're sitting empty and nobody wants to buy them because they can't use them for short-term rentals. Because people that are buying homes right now, just come in cash and they're buying short-term rental properties. Let's just be honest about that. That's who's buying those properties right now. You're not really selling to people that are making $50,000. And I just don't know what the sections are. Anything along, like really anything within a mile of the like Charlotte, you're not selling a $50,000 family. You might be selling to a $100,000 family, but you're not selling to a $50,000 family. So I don't think we're going to change the fabric to having just the, let's just say, six-pack Joe's not going to buy the house within a mile. Now, it may sound like I use too many generic terms, but trying to make sure you realize that the people buying your houses right now are people who have money. Not people who are barely making it, they're people who are established and buying their homes right now here in Point City. But you can pass any rules you want to get rid of those people. I understand that. I'm aware of that, and I can go look someplace else to put short-term rentals in. But that's my 2 cents worth, or $1, I guess, into rate inflation.
Could I ask you a question? So you're from Galesburg,
right?
Do you have any association here in Boyd City? Are you a property?
I have 4 pieces of property here in Boyd City, located up around here. I don't know map. I'm probably in yellow. I'm in the TRD, so I have 4 pieces of property in TRD. That's my association. Also, I have a property at Point Mountain.
Okay.
And they're all good.
No, I just said thank you. I
Yeah, no, it's good property even down here someplace. It's also in Wilson Township. So I do pay taxes, and like that's the other thing. You gotta realize that when you sell these homes, you sell for $200, $300, $400, even $600,000. You're getting a lot of tax money from us. And we do some money here. I mean, I just spent, $60, $70 over here at the I think the grocery store across the street here. Right. But no, we just spend a lot of money. And we like that here. I'm saying sometimes people try to engineer things. Like I said, I lived in Boulder, Colorado for 8 years. I lived in Champaign, Urbana for, well, I don't know, was there about 4 years. So I mean, I've seen how things can happen. Sometimes they have the consequences that they have down the road may not be what you expect to happen. I mean, I appreciate you guys looking at this. My concern is that You got some that are right now, go ahead.
Could you wrap it up in 5 minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. All I'm gonna say is that I agree that we also should look at people who are doing less than 14K rentals. If these like put somebody in some small back room, that's not a very bedroom, there's a fire. Hope they got more than one grass out of the location. All our units have at least, any bedroom, there's 2 ways to get out of bedroom. And that's just what, you know, an engineer, I want to make sure that somebody can jump out a window or whatever, not just have to go to one door. So I think any place you have that has a bedroom or a sleeping place, sleeping area, just think of a bedroom. You need to have 2 addresses. If you don't have 2 addresses, don't have them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. James, what was your last name again?
Hill, Hill, 9176 Shade Tree Circle, Galesburg, Michigan, 49053. Like I said, I'm an outsider, don't live here, but.
Thank you.
Chris Sprouse, 130 West Entrance Street. I'd like to also thank the committee. Thank you, Scott, for one, identifying this topic, 2, creating an opportunity for everyone to share, and then 3, allocating resources to get some objective information. So that's wonderful. So thank you all for doing that. This could have been something that was pushed through, but I appreciate it all the time. I'm going to just jump around on a couple items. The first item I would say is, I believe anyone that is currently having a short-term rental should have the opportunity to continue that as a short-term rental. Why? Because there's been many financial and family decisions made to purchase a property for such use. And so anyone that, you know, possibly we set a date or something and then communicate that, but anyone that has made that financial investment, made the plan, has that part of their, you know, budget, they should be allowed to have the freedom to continue to run that as is. Related to that, with the value of that property, possibly based on that short-term rental status, that license should carry over in point of sale. Most definitely it should, because the house's value was purchased at a value. If someone was running that, it should most definitely have that license, have the ability to be carried over. If that buyer doesn't want to do that, they have, so you'd have 30 days to exercise that. If they don't, it drops off. It should go with the property. And I don't know, that's more of the detail, but I think it's really important that it's in there. I think what's really important is there's been no issues or complaints with short-term rentals. Scott has stated that. Police came in, I was listening online, Chief State, no issues. Related to that, I don't see the benefit or the need of, for example, that Good Visitors Guide. We have ordinances in place. They should apply to current residents just like anyone else. Someone wants a fire pit, I like a fire pit. Our neighbors have them, everyone should have them. I'm sorry. Yeah. And also, you know, related to maintaining a house and the regulation, if someone is running it, you know, we have one that we run as a short-term rental. Our daughter just graduated high school. That's where our family stayed. When we have friends come up, people stay there too. It's this balance. And so that's really nice. We're going to do it well. So when we do want to rent it, people have a good experience and they come back. If things are shoddy, people aren't going to come back. I'm spending more time with the lawn and trying to grow grass at my rental than I am at my own house. Why? I mean, it's an investment and we maintain it very well. And so we have returning guests. We bought it as a short-term rental, people that were coming back. We get to know them. They stay 3 to 4 weeks. We know their family, our neighbors know them. It's really part of the community. I do believe there could be room for a cap and licensing. But again, I think that has to, anyone that's currently in the game must have an opportunity, I believe, to be in that first round, whenever that is. And then if it's deemed to have a cap on whatever it is, then we start there. If someone doesn't renew, they drop off. And then if there's room, then there'll be a waiting list, just like a boat slip. That's how we run it here. The violations, just some details, appealing a violation. I actually think an owner should have the opportunity to appeal even the first violation, not waiting to understand what it is and address.
Chris, you have to wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oscar Varden, 423 East Lincoln Street. I'll speak loud because you can't hear on Facebook. The Zoom link doesn't work, just so you know, that's why I'm here. I wanted to really, you guys have already heard what I've had to say for the most part, and a lot of people here have. So yeah, thank you for putting out this very transparent process. I really do respect and appreciate that. So thank you. I've already spoken a lot of to facts, done a lot of studies, and spoken to many of the people in this room that are short-term renters, and to hear their stories of why they do it, what the purpose of their short-term rental is to them and their family. And I've shared a lot of those in the prior meetings, and City was kind enough to put my study slideshow on their website, so all the information is there if you wanted to see that. But something that really concerns me is that we're getting ready to potentially implement policy in a really unknown economic climate. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they're calling for $6+ a gallon gas by the end of the summer. It'll be really interesting to see how we do as a community with our tourism industry. It'll be interesting to see what happens with a lot of the real estate market in the entire northern Michigan resort area because of the economic climate. I don't think it takes a genius to see some of the things that are happening. I just read today that Kellogg's left Michigan. We do not have a very pro-business economic climate in the state, and to create policy that is potentially going to, that we could potentially regret down the road and affect a lot of families, middle-class families that depend on this industry, I think is a little too, I just think it's getting ahead of ourselves with what we're about to see. And I just wanted you to think about that. Again, I know this is said tonight. I wanted to reiterate, you know, if we're going to apply any kind of ordinances or regulation on short-term rentals, I do believe that it should be for all rentals and, you know, maybe all property owners. Let's be fair. I said it last time, a very near and dear property to the city burned to the ground because of negligent long-term renters. Our Boyne City Historical Hospital on State Street. So maybe we should have these regulations for long-term renters too. It's something that I believe we just need to be fair about everything and allow private business to thrive in this town. And I will say from my own experience, knowing a lot of short-term rental owners that live there too, that stay there often too, that these are some of the best properties in town. I can speak for myself that the bones of my house, inside and out, utilities, everything is top notch. It's not gonna burn to the ground and no one's gonna get hurt in that house. It is the best. I know a lot of the properties in this town that have been remodeled to be for that use are some of the best properties in this town, and we can all thank them for increased property values and being able to look at a nice house when we walk out our front doors. So those are just some of the things I wanted to think about, and I would just caution this commission to keep an eye on the economy, which is out of our control. It's much bigger than us. And before, we make some decision that we could regret. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Lindsay Adams. I live at 326 Spring Street. I own 2 vacation rentals. We've had them going for about 8 years. We self-manage those. I don't think I have anything new to offer. There's just been a lot of really good comments brought forth by a lot of different people here today. I did want to comment that our units, 52 weeks out of the year, we rented those 37 out of the 52 weeks. Echoing what Oscar just commented about with the safety issues. If we are going to get to the point of doing any kind of inspection, I think we definitely need to look at long-term, same as short-term rentals. And I think if we're going to license any short-term rentals, they should all be included. The Good Visitors Guide, I think it had a lot of good information in there, but I would guess that folks staying in a vacation rental, the Good Visitors Guide probably would be read by people in my age group. Much more than the younger group. And I think a lot of people, the negative connotation that goes with vacation rentals, that it's the young partying crowd that comes in and causes all the problems. So that being the case, I don't think the Good Visitors Guide is really going to impact that situation. But the guide did have a lot of good information in it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Cindy Weaver, 507 Spring Street. A lot of great information. I appreciate how you guys are doing. We've had long-term rentals, we've had business rentals. The occupancy thing, I know I'm probably not in line with a lot of people here, but I'll just say that we've stayed at a lot of places that were short-term rentals, that the bedrooms had 2 queen beds in and 4 people went in it. I have friends that do a king bed with 2 adults in it and 1 king child in it. And then we have friends that are a family of 10, you know what I mean? And I agree with Aska. Chris, I thought brought up very, very valid point. Basically grandfather causing people in. People make life decisions when they set these up. I'm buying this property, it's got a, extra house that I can make into for in-law. When family comes, I can rent it out. I mean, so people have made lifelong decisions based on that. And all of a sudden we're sitting in major regulations that's going to change that. And so, those of us that, have those and have done those, I mean, I think that's a huge consideration. So, but yes, I really appreciate what people had to say here. I think Chris very valid, and Oscar with, looking at the long term, it's hard, economically. And I just feel like we're imposing a lot of restrictions, and like, what's our primary thing we're doing? We're looking at short-term rentals, but then we're adding a lot of other restrictions on there. And rather than starting out with one thing, we've seemed to take it and really blossom in it of putting a lot of regulations into place. So thank you.
Last call. Okay. We can go to, so, anything else, just if we get into a framework of some sort? What I thought we heard pretty consistently was the occupancy, trying to get a clear definition of that, the bedrooms, is that the way to go, or square footage of rooms, that type of thing. If you might want to stop.
Yeah, well, most I've seen, they've done it by numbers per bedroom and then maybe additional for other reasons. I can look more and see if there's other ways to look at that. Maybe bathrooms or there's square footage, I'm not sure.
Commissioners, you have any comments on that?
On occupancy, yeah. In regards to occupancy, I know there's 2 homes recently built up by my house that are not hooked up to municipal septic. They have tanks in their backyard. Knowing that there are older homes in the city that potentially are STRs as well that are tanks as well. How do we know that these tanks are meeting the capacity needs to 2 per bedroom, 2 per level? When I was looking up STR ordinances in different municipalities throughout Michigan, I think there was one municipality. Our city, I would say majority is on city septic, so it's not going to be applicable. But for the ones that there is a risk, a safety concern, how do we identify those? And how do we have language in the ordinance, making sure that the occupancy level is supported for that septic system? That's just one thing that I've seen in one local municipality. They did have to have testing done on their septic tanks if they were STR. They had to show proof of that septic inspection, and that went with the application process as well. I know about 90% of our STRs probably aren't septic tanks and they're hooked up to our system, but that's something that I did not see any language in that, this preliminary.
No, there wasn't. But like you said, there are other ordinances that do. Typically, it's kind of the rural townships that don't have, services. They have some type of regulation in there, and it'd be easily incorporated to identify, on public sewer, on septic tank, and then, if they're on a septic tank, you can require some type of inspection to verify the capacity of the tank. Make sure the occupancy doesn't exceed that.
Scott, would you mind going to the podium?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lindsay, did you have a question?
Well, if I own a short-term vacation rental and it has a septic issue, I'm gonna take care of it. Otherwise, we're gonna get nothing but bad reviews and nobody's gonna stay. So you don't need to legislate everything.
Well, we've had an hour and a half of public comment. We're gonna talk now. If we respond to everything, we're gonna work through all these things, but it was an issue that was brought up. And so, so audience, please, we're not gonna be taking any more public comment for a while here. We're going to continue our discussion. So, is there anything else?
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, I have a problem with the occupancy definition also. I don't have a solution, but I have an issue that I think it was Dan Wood said you have 2 bunk beds and 4 kids. You travel with the family, your daughters or sons and daughters brings a friend. Now you have a lot of kids in the house. I know this weekend there's travel baseball in Wayne City. All the rentals will be full of parents with a bunch of 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids that make up a softball team or a baseball team. They're going to be responsible. Those kids aren't going to be out doing fireworks at night. But my point is, if you put 2 per bedroom, it limits, I think, over limits what we can do. Like I said, I have a solution, but I think Lindsay says it right, over-regulation septic systems, you don't have to go there. But I do see that it'll kind of take care of itself. If it's on, you know, I travel all the time, with travel softball, travel hockey, and you take, you know, the parents and coaches, and you take a team of 12, and there's a lot of sleeping bags. That works.
All right, any other commissioner with comment on the
Well, like, I guess, if we're gonna do it like that, I don't have a problem. I agree a little bit with Tom, mainly because I'm one of 8, and and when I travel, let's see, there's 11 of us, 5 of them under 6, but, so, I mean, I can see, you know, Tom's point. I think that one needs to be worked out a little bit. Well, with that being said, I mean, I would think, you know, there are some that have abused that. I'm not sure where in my notes, I got them all, but, you know, about the 2-bedroom one, you know, sleeping, you know, 10 or something, that's a safety issue. You know, you got this tiny little house and you're cramming them in, I guess. I don't know how we address that. I guess, I'd like to just continue on here, your thoughts, and then go down the line.
Well, do you want to take the whole thing at one time, or do you know, is that how you do it? This is uncharted territory.
Yeah, got it.
Kind of break through something.
Yeah, it's gonna take 8 more hours if we go with every item, but if we get some general feeling,
Yeah.
to my point. But you brought it up, you know, you said that, you brought up the issue seems to be occupancy. So what's another issue?
Cat. That seems to be something that's,
Licensing, these ones and not these ones. I meant the CBD,
right.
regulate these and not them.
Yeah, it would be the licensing, caps, the type of inspection, the grandfathering current owners, clarifying the definition of the business unit and personal unit. Were some of the ones that I kind of heard throughout.
There's a theme that I said last week, and it was mentioned today by Lindsay and maybe by both of these. We don't want to regulate for the sake of regulation, and we don't want to. We don't have a serious problem, as was stated last week. You had over thousands of hours of rental between, I think, 3 or 4 between Rick and Lindsay Adams and Lindsay and Martin, and thousands of rental hours with no problem. So I don't want to. I want to carry that theme. I don't want to regulate for the sake of regulation. With that being said,
give an example of regulation for the sake of regulation.
Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, regulation for the sake of regulation is two-thirds of the document. No offense to you, Scott. I mean, you know, there was a lot put into this. Again, that's how we started this a little while ago. You know, was to try to address some of the things. What is the over occupancy, some of the safety issues, and you know, and the neighborhoods. You know, capping in the neighborhoods. I can see that. I see what I see is a lot of us getting into litigation
the way a lot of this is drawn up. And I don't, you know, I don't want the city to get sued, you know, for no reason whatsoever. With that being said, that's why I don't know how to do this. I mean, I think, again, I think the document is way overreaching.
Brian, just, we can only have one conversation here at a time, so if the audience please stay quiet, I appreciate that.
You know, Monica made some great points, you know, I mean, we have a lot of homes, you know, and always have in general that, you know, have sat, you know, vacant to an extent. And the SDRs become a problem. Again, I gotta agree with Tom that we had the police chief sit here and say, I got nothing, you know, and with that being said, part of this, you know, my comments, I mean, in my notes, I guess I could see maybe on a city website with owners and, you know, different names being posted, but I think you create the Mrs. Kravitz. I'm just running over there, oh, this is what I call, and now it's just that, you know, I'm just gonna call all the time. I mean, somebody sent the garbage out to her, and that shouldn't have been done, and you know, I think that it's I think we're starting to reach for this way over encompassing document when we can go down on the things that everybody that has talked about. You know, the licensing, you know, Ricky said, you know, hey, I'm an owner, you know, tell me what I need to pay. So many rich, don't overreach, right, yeah. You know, I mean, I think most of the, you know, people in here are not against something like that.
Marty,
yeah.
And I'm just helping you out here. Yeah. Another one that I think everybody might agree on is a local contact with a 30-minute timeline.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's fine. I guess that goes back to my, you know, my thing though. So where do the complaints, if you will, you know, again, we haven't had any. You know, the police chief said we haven't had it. So why wouldn't, in my mind, the whole thing that we talked about at the beginning was the police power aspect of this. And so why wouldn't it start at the police and then that would call the owner or whatever? It's, you know, how I see it. That's why I said that I think that this should be at the, you know, police department. But, and, you know, and as far as, again, if we're gonna get into over-regulating and saying, okay, now we are gonna be judge and jury about whether your house is completely in compliance and stuff, I don't want to be that. I don't want Scott to have to be that. I don't want the city to have to be that. You know, I think that again, if any of these people, Lindsay, you know, Rick, you know, sorry, I'm not trying to miss anybody or anything, but if they have an issue with their rental, they're going to hear about it, and they're going to hear about it by that person never coming back. And or they're gonna close the review that goes, I wouldn't rent this place. I mean, Jim's okay. I was worried that the place was gonna burn down while I was staying there. Can I ask one question of our crowd? Because we had one, well, all I want is a show of hands. So, because in this report, we had the minimum age. I don't know what the minimum age should be. So, of the people that rent short-term rentals out there or have rented them, is your minimum age, let me start at below. Do you allow 21-year-olds? No hands, no, just hands. Okay, you allow 22-year-olds?
Yeah, we allow 21.
Okay, and so do you allow 23-year-olds? You allow 24-year-olds? You allow 25-year-olds? Okay, so the 24 wasn't bad, I guess, you know, if you wanted to, you know, put that in, but again, I just, those are things that I don't know how we can, you know, regulate those things.
The 24, I'm confused. What?
It's 24 months for the age, and then you're not.
The person that.
It doesn't count.
Yeah, it's not considered an occupant.
Yeah, I think you guys are talking two different.
I mean, it was age for rent.
Yeah, there's nothing in there.
Oh, I guess I misread it.
Yeah.
So minimum age of someone to be there is 24 months, so I can't remake it.
24 months or under, you can bring as many as you want.
But I didn't have daycare and I didn't have to license that.
Okay,
All right, we
got a lot of things to do here, so.
So. I think another thing was said, I think Oscar said, you know, I think and it was mentioned by our gentleman that isn't from Verone here, James. You know, the fact that, you know, this city has benefited, immensely from, the beautification of a lot of these homes that got bought up by people and put the money into them, to an extent. So I think you gotta take that into consideration too. I'll let somebody else.
If I may add, Mr. Mayor, with that all being said, I agree with Marty, but I totally respect Larry's concerns that we started the conversation with, that the fabric of our community and the personality of our neighborhoods are important. And there's nothing better than the sound of kids and families in a neighborhood. That's the way I grew up. And yes, we've gained 25 homes since, you know, the stats that we've gained 25 homes of the short-term rentals, which takes it out of the market. Does that mean that families are not providing the short-term rental experience? And I'm not saying it's a bad experience, I'm just saying, I agree with Larry, I don't want to lose the neighborhoods. So again, it's back to balance.
At some point, we're gonna have to stop talking in circles. Well,
It's tough.
Well, I don't see it tough. You guys are kind of explaining it. I mean, there was a common thread on the occupancy. How many people would be allowed? There was something about the cap. What neighborhoods do we cap? What about licensing? All should be, I think the consensus was all short-term rentals should be licensed, and there would be a registration fee for the business units. The other thing was about local agent or local contact within a certain amount of time. I think I heard everybody pretty much doing consensus with that. The other item that I thought came up at the end was about grandfathering current owners to make sure that they have the opportunity to protect their investment before they don't have the opportunity to get a license. And those were some of the things that I thought I heard. So I was, you know, I don't see personally that being over-regulation.
The grandfathering thing, I mean, me personally, I think we got a lot of information here. I think we're gonna have to digest this. I don't think any progressive developments that go forward and trying to dissect this at this point right now. I think each commissioner has got a lot of information. We've heard Scott talk, we got a lot of information from him. Me personally, I got 50 questions, and I don't think anyone has time for all the questions that I got.
Okay, so you're bringing a point there, Tim. How do we move forward?
So I would say moving forward, in my opinion, the right thing to do is, like me bringing up the whole septic thing on the occupancy topic is, I think it's very common sense and very understandable if you have a house that has a septic capacity for 2-bedroom. In the health department, it certifies these homes in the septic systems for 3 people, but you're consistently packing 8 to 10 people into that home. You over capacity on that septic system consistently throughout the year. And that's where safety issues and concerns. So I've seen occupancy level be tied to septic systems that would take care of about 5% of our STRs potentially. We still have 95%. So I think we should, as commissioners, figure out the occupancy thing, take time to digest occupancy, take time to digest the whole capping this district versus this district. I would like that map. I asked Scott if he sent it. He said he didn't. He just made that today. So I would like to know, get that map to get a better view picture of where we're at as far as density levels go. There's a lot in the yellow, but look at the size of yellow versus blue over there, space-wise, as far as volume compared to capacity and density number units. So me personally, if you ask me what I think I should do or what my recommendation for capping right now, I wouldn't be able to give you one. If you ask me what I think we should be doing for occupancy, I couldn't give you one right now, so. That's kind of where I'm at.
Well, that's our, yeah, and I can appreciate that. I was just wondering if we come back, what recommendations Scott might have, or what we can discuss, or are we gonna come back like they just have it, wide open again?
Right.
And is there some way that we can come with something specific that we're gonna be able to discuss? Is what I was hoping to get to, so the issue of the septic.
No, I don't have any issue with any septic. I was just saying, along the terms of the occupancy, I've seen that high.
Right.
To help the conversation with the occupancy, thing. But we're not in the state where we're gonna progress forward in the conversation on these topics. So one of my questions, a few people, like the legality of it. Out of these 15 other municipalities, Charlevoix Township, all these other ones, have any of these communities been sued in regards to STRs and the regulations or ordinances they've had?
I didn't ask that question, so I don't know.
Okay.
I've heard of any of that.
And in regards to like the inspection, there's 9 out of 15 that you gave us here that do not require an inspection process. The ones that you have, yes, are those inspection processes just like self-affidavit process or the actual in-house?
Actual person inspecting the process. And some it's a staff person from the municipality, others it's a contracted individual, other it may be like the health department is required to do an inspection for the septic field. So there's a variety of inspections.
Yeah, I just, real simple, I think we've got really 4 main issues that we need to concentrate on. Number one being the cap. We've had 24 places in 6 months, I don't think we're interested in cap, it should wait too much longer to make it out of hand. The occupancy numbers seems to be the other hot topic. And going back to the cap, per housing districts density and inspections. Those seem to be the main 4 that I hear over and over that I think we should concentrate on. To Mr. Hill's point, don't make things worse. I've got a connection with one of my best friends growing up, lives in Boulder, Colorado, and it was a pile of rentals. Owned a pile of rentals. They made it so difficult with him to own these rentals and all their regulations that he sold them. And he went 20 miles out of Golden and bought a whole bunch more because it became way too difficult and cumbersome to own those rentals in Boulder, Colorado. So I think we gotta be careful that we don't overregulate because we're gonna be chasing people. That's all I have.
Well, I understand, I understand what George is saying, but did you not say at the last meeting, Scott, that, so these, it wasn't necessarily that we picked up 24 rentals. You said that a lot of times, they're seasonal.
Yeah, that's what I was going to try to make that point. We started getting this data in October. So we're through the first kind of season here. So whether this continues to go up or there's a seasonal fluctuation that goes back down, that's unknown. Personally, I suspect it's seasonal. I think there's a summer, there's some more, and then it may trail off in the fall and winter months. So that's my speculation.
Guarantee you'll see a kick up after talking about grandfathering ones in.
I would concur with that. City of Charlotte, that'd be great.
Okay, well, Scott, Mike?
So what I'm thinking, I'm starting to hear from the commission is they need time to process a lot of this information that they've got. I don't think they're ready to give Scott more direction tonight as to, tweaks on this. It seems like there needs to be more discussion by the commission as to, after that digested, as to working our way through the issues that are up, whether just the ones that George had or other ones that were brought up. But I'm thinking as a possibility is, shortly you adjourn tonight's meeting you go back as individuals and look at, you know, what are your main questions or issues that you want to have addressed? And get those to Scott within a certain period of time, possibly between now and our meeting next week. And then at next week's meeting, we could possibly set up another meeting date to follow up on. But then at some point, either in individual questions or either you get together as a group, you give Scott, or however you want to proceed, some additional direction on how you want to go forward.
I got a few just quick questions. Like the whole MFD thing, I'm still trying to, because I was talking to the gentleman that did the old schoolhouse the other day, his 4 units, he's doing those STRs, had a conversation with him if he's been found this. He's like, no, I don't care at all. I'm MFD. I don't care what happens with the STR ordinance or anything. I can see that incentivizing, trying to, and if people are coming to our community buying these homes cash, STRs, like comments have been made, why wouldn't you want to come buy a home and transition it to MFD, make a duplex out of it? Now you're opening yourself up to.
Well, it's not that easy to transition, that would require rezoning, which
Right.
this commission will control.
Right.
And if it's not consistent with the master plan, just trying to rezone something to get that one benefit is
Opening
the
yourself up.
definition of spot zoning. So,
Right.
you know, it would probably not be a successful strategy.
Right, so out of these 15 local municipalities, how many of them let MFD slip through, so on and so forth?
Well, a number of them regulate by district.
Right.
I know, like, the city of Charlevoix, they do. So basically, their traditional residential district, they have the cap on the condos, and the multifamily districts are uncapped. So, but they're still have a registration process. East Jordan, similar kind of circumstance in the, you know, residential neighborhoods. Yeah, but along the lake, and along the other areas, they have basically only uncapped. So it's, you know, units can operate there freely.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, have you seen any language when it comes to common ownership in like the TRD districts? So if you have a waiting list, say you're gonna throw a cap on of 200 units in TRD, right? Well, I have 15 of those units in the TRD. He's been on the waiting list for 3 years to try and get in, but I don't want to let up any one of my 15. So has there been any verbiage, common ownership with the density in districts?
Not that I can recall, and, you know, I think at this point, you're getting a little bit far in the weeds, if we're gonna go to that extent. As I reported probably a while back, I think there was maybe 5 or 6 that people that owned more than one, and then I think 2 or 3 that owned more than 2. So it's really not a big issue that I see. Sure, that gives us a possibility that people own 1 or different entities, but I don't think we have a lot of folks that own multiple units. So I don't think that's the biggest issue that we have to concern.
Okay, so Mike has given us a path forward as far as any questions or comments. Scott, for Tuesday, and then we could at our Tuesday meeting have a small discussion, and then instead of meeting our next short-term rental meeting.
And I'd be happy to meet individually if you want to stop by.
Yeah.
Whichever is most agreeable.
Well, Scott, I want to commend you, you've done a lot of work, and it's really been helpful. So, conditions, is there anything else?
So you want us to go through the, what Scott prepared for us, the summary, or
Was Scott prepared what we heard from the community, your own perspective and point of view, and try to narrow it down so we can make the process. Make it step forward. Okay,
I'll make a motion there.
is there a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for.